Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Wednesday. It's TLD Cast. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TLD Cast. My name is Brent Schlenker. I'll be your host today. I don't think I've ever said that before. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the chat. Thanks for hanging out with us today. Appreciate you guys being a part of the TLDC community and joining us. We're here every day, 8 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. UK time. We also hang out 24/7 in chat. Well, we don't actually all hang out 24/7, but it's available 24/7 in the Slack group. So be sure to jump in there and get acquainted with your colleagues and peers, because that's why we're here, to make everybody better at what they do in training, learning, and development. So if you're looking to boost your career, learn about new things, make some new friends and colleagues in the industry, then you're in the right place, especially today, because we have the wonderful and amazing Andy Hughes with us today from Designing Digitally. How are you, sir?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
I am fantastic. And you all might be wondering, holy smokes, Brent has a 2-for-1 special today. And he does. We have also the amazing Craig Seibert with us from Music Musings.
Ooh, ready? Ready?
It's great. I just posted a link to your site too. If I'd have known you were going to do that, I would have just left it off. But
I love that air horn sound.
Look, I forgot to turn my clown horn off. Oh, man, good times for sure. Well, we're here today to talk about a lot of cool things, but as our guests and as we like to do with our guests, we like to kick things off with just getting to know you a little bit better. Andy, why don't you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Oh, man. Yeah, sure. I am the president of Designing Digitally, Inc., and I'm also a professor at the University of Cincinnati. I teach a full course load each semester. And right now, my main focus is Designing Digitally. We are a custom content development company here in the United States, and we primarily focus on building corporate training for large Fortune 1000 companies, companies that are looking to educate, engage, and entertain their training staff. And obviously, looking at the website, that's kind of what we stand for here. And everything that we build is custom developed. We don't have anything out of the box. And the reason why is many of the challenges that the companies have, that they come to us, it's a very unique business challenge. And what we're trying to do is solve that business challenge through training. And whether that's, building it as a game, building it as a traditional e-learning experience, or developing it as a mobile learning app, that's kind of what we do.
Awesome.
And then for myself, outside of that, I have 2 kids. I play men's flag football. That's the only kind of activity that I still do. And I'm a video gamer. So I love to play video games, mostly console, PlayStation 4. Sorry, all you Xbox lovers. And that's me.
That's awesome. And Craig Seibert, welcome, my friend. It's so good to have you working from home today so we can have you in the video.
Thank you. I appreciate
Craig?
it. Yeah, who's Craig? I'm a training and development specialist. I work for Navy Mutual, but I kind of wear all the hats. I'm the only person on the team. I'm the LMS admin. I am the developer. I'm the designer. I'm the performance manager. I'm the succession planner. I'm the metrics bringer. I just kind of do it all. I'm right there with you, though, Andy, on the PlayStation. I'm good with that. I am also a gamer as well. I've got a 10-year-old son who is just getting into a lot of the games I'm playing in, so it's nice to see that freshness from him. But yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Cool.
Man. That's a lot of hats, my man.
Yeah, the man of many hats.
I feel it.
You know, it's super common. We had a guest on, and now I can't even remember his name because I just met him for the first time. Our guest on Monday was a one-man band, and it just got me thinking again about that whole. There's so many of us in the industry that do have to do all the things, right? And we're just like we're the training department of one. Yes, Thomas Harrell. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
I almost totally forgot, which was a fantastic guest, by the way. If you guys want to go back and if you missed it, he is unbelievable. So you got to go check him out on Monday's episode if you guys, listen to it on the podcast or whatnot. But anyways, one of the things that I don't think we've done with you yet, Andy, is go back in the time machine a little ways and tell us how you got into this crazy industry.
Yeah. Okay. So that's a good question. Okay. So I have to go quite a ways back. And here's what I mean. When I was, well, first off, I'm from a really, really small town. And the town has like 200 people in it. And it's called Vaughnsville, Ohio. And it's, if you look it up on Wikipedia, you'll find it's super, super tiny. And I grew up there and went to a school named Columbus Grove, Ohio. And it's extremely small. And what ended up happening is when I was in high school, or actually when I was in grade school, my dad bought one of the first PC computers and told me one very valuable thing, and that's go ahead and mess with it. If you break it, we'll figure out how to fix it. And as a little kid, that was like mind blowing. Like my dad was like, "What? I can touch your new fancy thing?" And I started playing with it. And then when I was 15, the local telephone company in Columbus Grove wanted to provide dial-up internet to the town, but they didn't know what to do or how to do it, and really didn't know a whole lot about computers. So myself and two other guys learned how to set up a T1 and a server box, and actually did build out the first internet service provider. It was called Q1 Technologies in Columbus Grove. From there, I was hired by the Putnam County Educational Service Center to be a tech coordinator for district schools, and that's when I realized that I didn't really like tech support a whole lot. So I ended up going to college, undergrad I ended up going to college when I was in high school at Lima Technical College and getting an associate's degree. So when I went to bachelor's, I double majored in interactive media and graphic design. And while there, I did an internship at a photography studio, then an e-learning company, and then I was hired before I graduated, like a month before I graduated, to an e-learning company in Sylvania. Worked there for about 6 months, and then left and moved to Cincinnati, where I ended up getting hired as a contractor for GE to do e-learning for GE's turbine engine plant. And in that meantime, I started teaching at the Art Institute Interactive Media at night while I was working during the day as an e-learning developer. And eventually I quit the e-learning development for GE and started doing it freelance on my own, and at the same time teaching. And then left the Art Institute, went to UC, and the Designing Digitally started as just me. And now we have 20 full-time employees in-house. And so that's kind of the quick overview. In between that, I was a contractor. While I was starting the business, I was a contractor for the state of Ohio. So I got to work in California and Ohio. And what I was doing, and this was, early 2000s, I was building games for kids to learn math and science and all this stuff back in like 2001, when no one's ever heard of STEM or anything. We had a $15 million grant with the state of Ohio to build games for kids that could be reused by the department or the U.S. Department of Education over and over as reusable learning experiences for kids. And so that's kind of how I got into the gaming side. I already went to school for interactive media game development, but that's kind of how all that molded. And so
I bet you were using Flash back then, right?
Oh yeah, authorware, director, Flash. What's crazy? At GE, they would never, ever, ever allow us to use Flash. So we ended up building them all as JavaScript and HTML courses.
Wow, even back then, huh?
And now we're all the way back. So we have
Yeah.
just full circle. I literally was writing and doing like mimicking software with HTML and JavaScript because they had this software platform and they want to make a course out of it. They refused to use Flash back then because it was like Flash 1 or Flash 2, and they were worried about security because it's cheap.
Yeah, still buggy a little bit too, probably.
Yeah, we were using AICC then.
Okay.
So everything was AICC because it was an aviation. So had to use AICC for all of the communication. Back then we were using like Plateau so as the LMS. So back when Plateau existed. So
now it's been consumed by some other big company, probably, right?
Yeah. Is any Sam asks, is there any of this stuff still around in use? I highly doubt it. One of the reasons why I left that company is it was a little. The courses were what you would see in basically conversion of PowerPoint. What you would see in the late '90s, early 2000s. It was just conversion of PowerPoint. So as a developer, that just got old because I just felt like a factory.
Yeah.
Doing the same courses for GE over and over. So
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, Claudine remembers Plateau. All right.
Yeah, but that's a crazy story. I mean, I grew up in a super small town with what I consider to be a vast difference compared to what other people have ever seen. There were no. There's a post office. There's no grocery. There's no fast food restaurants. There's no bar. There
was a gas station at one point, right?
Back when you were there, though.
Yeah, stop now. You're showing my age. Stop.
So, for all of you guys who don't know, here's a crazy story. So, I'm in the industry. So is Craig. And we got to talking one day at a conference, and Craig's like, "Where are you from, man?" And I'm like, "Oh, from a small town you won't even know." And he's like, "No, tell me." And I was like, "Bonsville, Ohio." And he goes, "No way." And his family's actually from there. So it's really crazy. Like, we didn't know each other. Craig's a few years older than I am. We didn't know each other in school at all. Craig had left and gone before I even got to high school. It was neat, though, because now we talk about Bonsville and what's going on. And I'll be there this weekend, actually. I'm going to visit my 95-year-old grandmother. And it's living in the same house she's been living in for 70 years.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Well, I think it even goes deeper, too, because, I mean, our parents knew his parents, and they hung out with each other and went over to each other's houses and talked. And my dad even at one point dated his aunt. I mean, this is how small this town is. But it's really weird to look back on that and see, coming from that really small area. And a lot of people that live there stay there. And had we not moved out of there, I probably wouldn't be in the career I'm in right now. But not to get too deep into my road too, but I started in college with computer engineering, and I didn't like it. Got out of school and went back for an art degree, and that art degree made me want to both do digital art and to teach. So I wanted to teach as soon as I got out of college. I found that to be pretty cumbersome. You really have to have a specific degree to teach in college, and teach in high school in art, or art in high school or art in grade school. Really is not accepted very well in most places around nowadays. So that kind of naturally moved me into finding jobs to hold me over. I got in at Geico, and Geico actually was good enough to let me kind of move into learning development career about 12 years ago, and then just took off from there. I absorbed everything I could possibly do. I used the talent that I had gained on my own from learning all Adobe's products, learning Flash, learning Illustrator, learning Photoshop, and then applied that to learning and development. And I learned the back end side of it, and then I learned the front end side from a really good mentor I had at Geico for about 5 years, who kind of helped me with the design side of it, with creating learning and how learning affects people in a business, and how learning affects people personally. And it was really it's weird that we've come along this road almost from on the same direction, but from a really, really small spot, and just to converge at the in the near middle of that excursion is just totally strange. And
it takes small world to a whole nother level.
It does, and I think Andy kind of talked about the meeting, but he casually mentioned that he was from a northwestern Ohio city where there was just basically cow fields, and that's what triggered me to go, hey, that sounds familiar.
That
I
sounds like
wonder.
Mothman.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's kind of, yeah, it's really weird to see that small town, mentality, and us to just be in this big exploding L&D world now.
Well, it's amazing to me that so once I got to know Andy, and once I, started getting connected to folks like Karen North as well, I started realizing that, there's a lot of e-learning or instructional design activity going on in Ohio. And I'm like, what's going on with Ohio? It's
Man.
Everybody in our industry seems to be from Ohio these days.
Ohio is one of the top producers of educators. So one of our biggest producers out of the universities are teachers. So what ends up happening is they get a teaching degree, they may migrate to the instructional design side. Craig and I are very similar. My undergrad is digital design, which is computer art, and then with a graphic design degree. So we have that similar, like it's a bachelor's in fine arts. And then what ended up happening is because I got experience at that interactive media, that's how the education side started. But he's right about getting into college. I have to give a shout out. If it wasn't for my mother-in-law, there's no way I'd be teaching at the college level. She was a president of a private college, and she gave me a recommendation. And so they interviewed me and were very skeptical, but without her opening that door.
Rightfully so.
Shout out to her. Right. Pays to have a mother-in-law that was a president of a college.
Yeah, right. I never would have been able to teach if I didn't have somebody pulling some strings for me too. I took a very similar path when I was in grad school. One of the women that was in the program was a director at the local community college here in Phoenix, or one of the many. And she was like, "We need somebody else to teach. You'd be great at it. I'll get you in." And I'm like, "What? I'm still in school. How can I also be a teacher?" She's like, "No, you know more than all these kids in the class know." She's like, you just, the tests are all written for you. It's all good. You should just go do it." I'm like, "Okay." Ended up doing it for a really long time, moved around quite a bit, but I did the Art Institute for a while too.
I loved the Art Institutes. I worked really hard there. And the reason why is I don't want to go down this conversation, but they're paying a lot of money for that private school. So I tried to work as hard as I could to make sure that they walked out. And believe it or not, two of the top graduates from the Cincinnati one actually work here. One is my director of development that started the company with me. He was one of my students, and then he graduated. I said, "Come on over." And then one is our lead programmer. He was one of my students. So they've both been working here for about 8 or 9 years now.
Yeah, I mean, for those people who do have businesses looking for talented folks, the Art Institute really does graduate some very, very skilled, talented, I want to say kids, but they're not really kids at that point. But so I mean, it's a great place to go. But anyways, I digress and I get us off track as I tend to do. So did you happen to find that a way to show that an example of
yeah, sure. Let me see if I can.
Award-winning project? I would really love to talk about that a little bit with our.
Yes, we can. Dun, dun, dun.
There it is. All right, so let's give a little background on it. Tell us a little bit about the project.
Okay, so Darden. Darden is the parent company of Longhorn, of Olive Garden, of Red Lobster, and of other restaurants. And Longhorn, technically what happened is Darden does a lot of real quick. They remind me of Amazon, the way they do their training. It's, mostly built in-house. It's very social-driven. It's very light. It's very, here's the information you need. Not a lot of pizzazz to it. Traditional type of traditional type of presentation style e-learning. And so they decided, hey, look, we have a demographic that may benefit from doing some game-based learning experiences, but they're very nervous and very hesitant. So, we talked about this project for years before they actually said, yes, let's do something like this. So here are some of the challenges that we had and kind of what we had to build for this project. Number one, they really have what we call POS systems, and that's point of sales, not what you're thinking, people. But they are, because here's what you should know. Those point of sale computers that they use are POSs. And this is where I'm going with this. Everything you're going to see in this learning experience is actually a touchscreen experience. And the reason why is this has to go on something that, like one of those Chrome, I mean, there's no processing power outside of maybe an iPad 1 or maybe an older Chromebook that these point of sale computers are using that they're touching, because they don't have to do a whole lot. So we couldn't get all crazy and do something in 3D because there's no graphics card. We couldn't get too crazy with the audio because some of them don't even have audio to it. Why would they? They're just point of sale systems. But they have training on this, and so they do have a web browser, so we were able to build it inside of a web browser so they can log into the LMS and actually activate this. And what this is the situation that they were trying to handle is teaching an employee that wants to become a manager in the future how to actually do effective customer service and what's called throughput. Throughput is getting customers in the door. After they've come in the door, getting them seated, getting them fed, making them happy, getting them paid, and getting them out the door. Just like any business, it's all about how much flow they have, how many people come in, eat, and how many leave. That's how much money they make for the night. And how many are happy and are going to return depends on how much money they're going to make tomorrow night. And so what this is an actual game-based experience that allows you, and it's completely randomized, to be able to go through and learn how to do that experience and how to handle customers, how to get them through, how to interact with them. And the cool thing about this is the first thing you do is you pick your avatar, who you would like to be. And then from here, you get your backstory. This is completely randomized, so your backstory kind of changes. And then from here, what ends up happening is you're now in charge of this entire restaurant. So we're just going to kind of get you into the introduction of this. Now, here's the cool part. These are not just, what you normally see are multiple choice canned responses. The thing that's happening right now is it's actually going through and we're using what's called an AIML chatbot. And what's happening is the chatbot's actually interacting with you depending on the type of person you are, the decisions that you make, the mood that they're in, and then they actually interact and respond to you. And the same thing with your conversation. So if you see, when I do make these interactions, it takes a second because it's actually processing that data with the chatbot and giving responses and interaction, so that everything is more dynamic each time that you take this, rather than just 4 or 5 different type of response mechanisms or a few just randomization pieces. So what this is it allows them, and as you can see, they're starting to get a little happier with our conversation of how to handle it. And if I were actually taking this for training, I could hear it. I have it all muted. So she talks throughout. We have audio and narration. But take into consideration, there's not a whole lot of craziness going on because, again, this is point and click. They're doing this on a POS system, just like a tablet. They're not actually doing it any other way. So my mouse is obsolete in this situation. So what ends up happening is I continue down these scenarios. If I were to get this right and interact with her in a correct way, and then what would end up happening is they would eventually be happy with us. Oops, darn it. See? And what's ended up happening is I keep seeing how happy, how sad they are, if they're going to come back or not. And I continue to have to interact with these customers. And as we go through, more and more customers open up. And then it's all randomized. So the next time I take this, it's not in the same order. It could be a customer over here, over a different situation. So you can see different icons, and that is based on the 5 core competencies that they had that they wanted us to work on, so that these individuals that will be future managers know what those core competencies should be. So each one of these scenarios and situations are a little different. But as you can see, now I have guest feedback on how I interacted with them. And the cool part is this is posted just like Yelp. So the way that you interact with them gives you the Yelp reviews based on how you interacted with that chatbot.
Yeah, Sam. Sam's got a question. And,
Is the URL changing here? Is it a single asset, but it's communicating with a database? Yes, it's communicating with a database. It's communicating with a self-contained actual database. Just an SQLite database that can be placed within inside of the actual course and then used there. A lot of people get like so hung up on a database with a course inside of an LMS, but there's a handful of things you can do. You can build a processor yourself that can just process some of the suspend data. You can build with an SQLite database that could just be placed inside and just run with the self-contained effort. You could then just build a database and have a cross communication piece that's communicating with another database if that server will allow it to. Or you can ask the customer for a database, or you can set up the LRS, or you can use Watershed or one of those to be able to interact with it. But this one, the database lives inside of the self-contained course, inside of the LMS, and is being written to when they interact with it back and forth.
Yeah.
So yes, it's portable.
Okay.
And here's the thing that we get hung up on as educators. This is just a website, and you can make a self-contained version of a WordPress site if you made it with an SQLite document and just make it do local host in that directory, and it'll actually just it'll connect, and you can use databases just like you do when you make a website. But we don't really think of it that way because we get freaked out about that stuff because it's computer programming, and so you can do a lot of things. And my best advice is to use SQLite because then you're not really doing like heavy SQL material. And let's be honest, you're not tracking all of that stuff, and if you are, in which we've tracked a bunch of stuff, it's got to align to the metrics that you want to see. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time tracking stuff. Who cares?
Yeah. So, Craig, as you're looking at something like this, where do you see? I mean, you could do this in what kind of simulation like this could apply to the work you do?
That's probably a hard sell for me to get that into what I'm doing. And unfortunately, I'm still digging into the company and what they need first at this point. And I don't see a need for it yet, but I did want to touch on something. I mean, yeah, I know we're kind of springing ahead to our gamification discussion next week, but I think you mentioned about programming, Andy, about, actually needing to know code, and it's becoming invaluable nowadays to actually have that talent. I think you're talking about databases and reaching out to databases and pulling information in based on, random choices. And those choices go to for lack of better description, they go to a table and pull something from the table based on the input. And I'm going to relate it back to when I was playing World of Warcraft heavily, I built my own server at some point. And when you do that, you create tables for the things that drop off world events. So it goes out and calls to that table based off of a random role. And to take that idea and put that into something like this isn't too far of a stretch to just look at the actual way video games create their randomness and their AI and their how they control reaching out to those tables and those files.
Exactly. But again, one of the things that we talked about at the beginning, Craig, is you're in a situation where you are a developer, you're the LMS administrator, you're the designer, you're the audio technician. Something like this becomes something that turns into a 6-month project for you. And that's the reason why we do what we do. This is a 6 to 8 person project that you see right here.
Yeah.
You have instructional designers, programmers, you have graphic designers, you have, our animators. Then we have to test it. So we have testers, focus groups. But the outcome of this is very impressive for Longhorn and for the customer interaction. And that comes to my next big thing. One of the cool things that we have to take into consideration that I learned just this weekend is it takes 6 months to make a Rolls Royce. 6 months, because they craft it by hand and they take the time to make sure it's done right. It takes 17 minutes to make a Toyota, or I'm sorry, 17 hours to make a Toyota. So do you think the Toyota and the Rolls-Royce have the same quality output? Absolutely not. So take into consideration that when we have, and I see this all the time, we have customers that want this done in like a month, and I'm going, you need to go find a factory that's building Toyotas.
But can't you just use a rapid authoring tool and just crank it out?
Yeah. And the thing is that's fine. You want a Toyota, that's fine. And don't get me wrong, Toyota's one of our clients. They have great products. But if you compare a Toyota to a Rolls-Royce, I'm sorry, but Toyota, you're getting smeared. And so it's the same situation. The time and energy that's put into this, you're going to get a better outcome. And the thing that I think it blows my mind about business is if you train your employees well, you're going to have better business. So that means if you spend the money and the effort to build something like this and to really make an effective impact in that organization, you're going to have a better business. So for me, it just blows my mind that training is not, one of their number one efforts. It always goes to advertising and marketing to get their name out, which is respectfully, I understand. But if you really want to have a very strong and improved business, it comes down to investing in your human capital, because we're now all basically service-based type of jobs. That's 75% of all the jobs in America.
Well, I know you just spent like 5 minutes.
Bad hiring. Ooh, can I answer that one real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
It costs you 45% more money to hire someone new than it is to try to retrain and work with the existing problem employee. Now, you also take into consideration it takes one bad apple to just ruin and rotten the rest. So the thing that I can tell you is people can be trained. Attitude cannot be trained. Passion cannot be trained. So if they care to be there, that's their own personality, not necessarily the train side of things.
Yeah. Attitude and passion. Yep. Thanks for that question, Mike. That's it's huge. Craig, what was your question you were going to ask before that?
It wasn't a question. I really just want to tag on what Andy said. I know you spent 5 minutes basically explaining, the difference between Rolls-Royce and Toyota, and I'm sure I'm not the only person out there that has the struggle of talking to management, upper management, your direct report, to what it takes to create something like this, to the time, the money, and the effort that gets put into something like this. And I mean, it's no joke that the struggle for me has been to get my company to understand they've never had a training department ever. They've never had anything to do with training in this company other than turn and learn or pieces of paper. And to get them to understand just the time. I mean, let's not even talk about money, because whether it's my salary or hiring out just to get somebody to do it, like designing digitally, just look at the time itself. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, you said 6 months on this? On what you created here?
Five and a half, almost 6.
And a team of 6?
Yeah.
So to get my management to understand that, and we've come back to that before, the communication from people that are in the field, in the L&D field, that are professionals and know this stuff backwards and forwards, talking to someone who doesn't, that disconnect is so hard to overcome at this point. And you hitting it home is really something that I think every company that either wants to validate what they're doing, like me, or to actually get someone that can do this better than you can, go out and get quotes. Go out and get find 5 or 6 companies, have them, send them a request for, you know what I mean? RFP.
Proposal?
Request.
Or get a
proposal. Yeah, get proposals. Get 5 or 6 of them and just see what kind of timeframes you're looking at. Because I think when you present that to the person you're trying to convince, that it's a glaring, flashing light of, hey, you don't understand what this takes to actually get something like this into production.
Yeah. And it's funny you say that, because we see that all the time. And a lot of it comes down to their business is running a mile a minute. They need this sooner than later. One of the things that we do here, Designing Digitally, is we do our analysis phase and then provide a new Gantt chart and project plan for actual production. And the reason why is when we go into our determine phase, we have found that they become monstrous beasts and they don't understand why. Like what you guys are watching right here, this seems very simple, right? You're just seeing some text fly by. No, that is not what's happening in this background. That is why this is taking this way to load. That's why it's, you know, doing what it's doing. There's all this back end stuff, but the user doesn't see that. So why does it take so long? I could have had this built. Or we see that a lot. I see that at conferences. Somebody will come up and be like, oh, I could have built that in like 3 weeks. And I'm like, really? You could? So you can articulate all of those dynamic conversations and all of that effort by yourself, along with building all the back-end systems that it uses to do this. Because if so, then why don't I fire the 10 people that were working on it and just hire you? Because it would cost me a lot less money. And I actually said that to somebody once, and the look on their face was like, how dare you? And I'm thinking, but you just said to me that you could do this by yourself in 3 weeks. So put your money where your mouth is then, or just don't talk.
Yeah, just do it. It's interesting. I mean, you've touched on a lot of really great points, and we could do a whole show on many of them. And one of them speaks to what you just mentioned, and that is a lot of times when we go to conferences or when we see people present the projects that they create, we only see what's on the surface, right? We only see the visual part of it. We don't ever, or very rarely do we hear, you know, why those decisions were made. Why does it look the way it looks? Why was it created the way it was created? Like, you know, I'm sure there's a ton of people saying, you know, why is this all HTML and JavaScript based? Why didn't you just use Storyline, or why didn't you just use Captivate, or why didn't you just use something else? You know, and people start thinking that. But you mentioned it really early on, right? When you said, you know, we learned doing good analysis. You did a technology analysis and discovered, hey, you know what? This is going to be playing on a bunch of devices that don't have a lot of processing power, right? All those things that you mentioned could be an old Chromebook, could be an old, you know, version 1 iPad, you know, whatever. You needed to, you know, there are these trade-offs that we have to consider to make great design and development decisions. And my guess would be 90% of the people in our industry, even developers, even really good developers, have no idea what you meant when you said AIML, had no idea what you meant when you said, you know, SQLite, you know, HTML, all of that. And these are the types of things, these conversations are what we need to have more of in our industry, because there is some really great tech out there that you can learn to create cool projects like this that you could never do in any of the, you know, quote unquote authoring tools that are out there.
Right. And I think you can do some amazing things with those authoring tools. You can, believe it or not, you can interact with an SQLite database with Storyline. We've done it. You're able to take 360 video and bring it into Storyline. We've done it. You're able to do games in Storyline. We've done it. It's what we do, and this is not to well, I'm going to piggyback on what you're saying, Brett. Our analysis phases almost take a month. So if you can't commit to a month, and here's why. If we spend an entire week researching, the second week we meet with you guys, we present some information, we get some feedback, we go back and revise it. We come back, we do more testing. We then write our design document. Then we meet with you guys and we review it. Then we revise it. Then we come back, we finalize it. Then we approve it. Then we build our timelines. Then we rock and roll into production. That's a 4-week effort. And for anybody that's thinking to themselves, no, we can get it done in a week, you're ludicrous. And the reason why is you're not spending enough time and energy to really think everything through. And that's what will really make it a success, because it's not just about the learning and the pain points and that, but it's also about the technology, the way the user is going to interact with this, the flow, when will they do it, how will they do it, what's their incentive to do it. You know, we have this crazy crazy notion in the training realm that if we put it up on our LMS, they must take it, and that's it. And so they already come in with a negative connotation thinking about training, because we've always said, well, it's on the LMS, you must take it. So we got to change that mental thinking at the same time. They come in here, and what I think is amazing about something like this project is each time that we do one of these, we do a focus group, they get done, and every single time I hear, wow, that was more fun than I expected it to be. And it's amazing to hear that, because there's two things happening. Number one, they already think training is going to suck, because we've had this mental thinking that training is not fun and learning shouldn't be fun. You're supposed to learn it, and that doesn't make any sense. And then second, they have this, like, they're blown away that you can approach it in a fun way, and it's not exactly like work. It's not exactly like the way that it's supposed to be done, and there's this element of fantasy and fun and exaggeration that's not too corny, but it's fun, that they just don't see. So this is the first, like this one that you're seeing right here, this is the first one for Darden. So, this one opened up the floodgates for us, and now we're working on many others with them. And we're very excited about that.
It's very cool, and this is another. I've just kind of shuffled a few things away in the back of my mind from when you first started talking about the project that I just want to highlight for people. And another one of those is that you had been talking with them for a really long time about doing something like this, and that this could help solve that particular pain point that they were having. But it took a long time, and I think we need to, as an industry of influencers, when we're trying to change cultures or when we're trying to engage either as a consultant or if you're internally, that this stuff takes time, right? Just like doing one presentation to a bunch of executives probably isn't going to make a major shift in how you're doing things. But, slowly over time, if you keep at it and you keep explaining it to them and keep having it in front of them, showing them some examples, showing them what can be done, all that kind of stuff. I think over time, people will start to see it. You start to get into their budgeting cycles, they start to remember you. Oh yeah, we want to do that. And so it's the business side of what we do that I think a lot of us in the industry get frustrated with, just because we don't know it too well, or, we learn it through hard knocks. And so, there may be people in the chat now just kind of rolling their eyes at me even mentioning it, that, oh, that's not important. Somebody else deals with that. My manager deals with that. I'm just the designer anyways. But I would argue that everybody should understand that this stuff sometimes takes time, especially when you're trying to create something that is unique and a different approach to what people are used to.
Yeah. I can tell you, we lose quite a few projects to, oh man, that just seems like it's going to take too much time. There are projects or budget, yeah. Budget's another one. It does take investment and time into this, but the other side of it is you're going to get more out of it. I think of it in a way of, we could buy a package and train once from a trainer, or we could train a bunch of times with a trainer. How are we going to be when we get done with those? Are we going to be in better shape when we did it a handful of times than we would if we just did it once and done? That's the thing about this. It took more time to build, but they can keep replaying this over and over and over, and it's dynamic and it changes, and they keep getting different customers. So what you're seeing right here is the end score. This is how I did with each one of those individual customers, which is part of their 5 pain points. And each time I come in, different customer, so on and so forth.
And you were clicking through quite a few in that scenario. So this is not just a one table and then get a little score and then you're kind of done with it. This is extremely complex, what you've created here.
Exactly. And that's the stuff that people don't see in the back end. They just see me clicking around and going, well, that looks just like these other modules that I've seen. And we're going, we know, because this has to be on a point of sale tablet computer, but it's way bigger than that. You got to look behind the curtain. Now, on the other side of it is, I've seen some very good rapid development builds at the same time. So I don't want anybody to be discouraged. But if you're going to do something where you want them to reuse it and you want to have a tool that I feel doesn't just go up in the LMS and collect pixel dust, something like this is a better option. And I think of it this way. How many of you guys played a sport or were in band or were in any type of like club when you were in school? Just go ahead and say yes and what you were in the chat.
The digital hand raising.
Look, they are like, I left. So what I think's fascinating about this is when we were in sports or in band, we practiced every single day. And over time, we got better and better and better at it. But for some reason in corporate training, we think one time a year is going to make us better and better and better at it. And so one of the things that Designing Digitally has tried to do is when we build material, we're trying to build learning ecosystems so that like what you're seeing with Longhorn here, what would happen is we would actually build the rest of the training as maybe presentation style with additional, explainer videos and different mediums and material. But this would be the assessment game they could play over and over and over again to practice whenever they would like. And it's only about 10 to 15 minutes, but it's dynamic every single time. So this tool actually provides a higher ROI than that one-time shot out the door, because you're going to have 1,000 people take it. Let's say you spent, I'm just making this up. Let's say you got 5,000 people and you spent $50,000. You now know it's how much it is per person. It's $1,000 a person. Well, what happens if they take that twice? It just became $500 a person. What happens if they take it 3 or 4 times? $250 a person, or $330 a person, or how many times? What if they took it 10 times for you because they wanted to compete with their friends or get a better score or practice this a little more? Your ROI it cuts in half. You're cutting your expense in half every single time they play it again. And that's the one thing that we don't think about. That's what we don't value. And that's how actual practice works, is over and over and over a period of time. Not this one and done crap that I see all the time. Sorry.
Yeah. So no, it's awesome. It's awesome. You make some great points, but we're about 10 minutes away from the top of the hour. And one point I just want to make sure that we touch on, or at least talk about, is has this been out in the wild in long enough for you guys to get some data back, to get some really good feedback from the users?
I actually do, and I just got it. So the one thing I got to do is ask them if I'm allowed to say it. So the reason why is I think I said that.
Dang it. Well, you don't have to give us details. Can you kind of beat around the bush a little bit and just, give us some round idea?
Yeah. One of the things we did get some of the feedback is over 78% of the people that played this said that they want to play it again and that they highly enjoyed it. And it's something that they want to see more of. That's what I can tell you at the current moment. What I can't tell you is how many people get and what their impact is, because that's under NDA, but they will allow us to put some of that stuff in the actual case study. So we'll be updating the case study that's on our website, and you can see that case study and read that case study. So we'll update it there for you guys to take a look at.
Yeah, that would be fantastic, because people are always asking, where are some good examples, Brent? Show me something that of something that somebody has done in the game realm, or a simulation, or something beyond the PowerPoint click next thing, and a lot of times, because of NDAs and everybody needing to protect their work, it's hard to find. So thank you for having that case study up there and sharing it with everybody.
We push that hard. Because we see that there's a lot of competition that Designing Digitally has, that has quite a few large name clients, but we don't see a lot of the output of the work. And being from the Midwest, I'm always about show your work and let your work speak for you. You don't need to sit there and boast it up if you don't have to. You should be able to see the work, see the body of work that these people are producing, and have a better understanding if they are a good fit for you. So I'm all about show your work and let your work do your talking.
For sure. Craig, what's on your mind? I don't mean to ignore you, dude.
No, not
Sorry,
at all. No, seriously, it's funny because I think Molly actually asked at one point what the pain points were, but I was actually thinking more specific, because it's been something else we've dealt with when we've looked out at either outside companies doing stuff for us or me doing stuff internally, and interaction with SMEs is one of the big issues that we always deal with. And I was just kind of curious, even if you wanted to get specific on this particular one, how did that go? Is that a pain point for you guys on a regular basis?
One of the things is this is kind of cool. Our instructional designers have built games to extract information from SMEs. So they play these extraction games with SMEs. They meet with the SMEs, both virtual and face-to-face if we need to. And we play these games that extract the information out so that they can enjoy working with us on that extraction of data.
So gamified analysis. I totally am digging on this.
Yeah.
we probably don't have enough time to talk about it specifically, but maybe we save that for the next time you're on.
Yeah. But it's a way for us to have fun with the customer while extracting knowledge that we need. So it's a lot of fun, and it's something that the customers really enjoy because they really have an understanding that, okay, this company really does understand how to extract pain points, but also really understands gaming. And we're not just going to see it from the output of the course, but we see it internally also when we're working with them.
Well, so it also shows that they appreciate the subject matter experts' input and how deep that they're going to go with you.
Yeah. And it's really cool. I mean, we've had subject matter experts that were, I can tell you one really cool story about a subject matter experts. We had SMEs from Auburn University, which were 13 professors, and we were trying to get them feedback, but it's really hard to do. And we were all virtual. So you know what we did is we actually had the project champion, which is the project lead inside of the company, take an iPad and put it in the back of the room and just hit record and let them just unfiltered talk about the project and the alpha version. And want to know something? That was some of the best feedback we ever got, because it was not filtered, it was not candy coated. It was, they were complaining about this, okay, we got it, we will fix that. And they didn't really know that was taking place till afterwards. And they were okay. Some of them were not very happy it went to us, but we never took anything personal. It's business. And what we did is we ended up building an excellent learning simulation for Auburn University. And it was one of those things where you can extract knowledge in a handful of different ways. And was just to record them, unedited in the back of the room and let them look at a project, because they will be brutally honest with you.
Yep. Oh, thanks, John. I keep forgetting to do that. There we go. Good stuff, man. This is great. And also, might I also point out too that, Craig, your audio is sounding fantastic with the new microphone or whatever you switched to. You sound awesome.
I think
that's my new podcasting tool. So
nice. It's working well for you.
You should take notes, because just on the fly, I switched from my phone to one audio to a completely different camera and completely different audio, and didn't have any technical difficulties at all.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah, seeing as though I've been struggling with the technical difficulties today, that makes me feel great. Thanks. So, all right. So we've talked about the beginning of this, the analysis. We talked about the end, getting all of that data. We've talked a little bit about the production of a tool like this, and gamification and gamified learning. And I would be, are there any other aspects of the project that we haven't touched on?
Let's see. Implementation. One of the things is it went into Cornerstone, and it still needed to be SCORM coded. And the way that it's working is it's actually taking your mastery score. So it says out of 600 points, but we actually had to do it out of 100. Your mastery score is out of 100. So it would calculate that right there. And the reason why is SCORM will only take 0 to 100 for a score. So what ends up happening is it computes your mastery score once you're done. So I only went to this night. If I kept going, I'd go multiple nights. And then after a couple of nights, it would say you're done with your shift. Here's your mastery score. And then that's what shipped up there. And then everything else is, running with that SQLite database. Let's see, a couple things. Oh, here's one. One of the restaurants called our office complaining about it because they couldn't hear it, only to find out that there's no audio out of that POS system. So there were no speakers or audio card, so there's no way to have audio. So one of the things I can tell you is you have to be very patient with some customers, especially your end users, because you just don't know what type of technology hindrances they have. So, you know, we're trying to track it down, figuring out what's going on, only to determine that they don't even have an audio card or speakers or an audio jack or even a speaker in the POS system to make that happen.
So was that, so let's kind of break that down a little bit before we run out of time. We're getting close here, but since we're talking about it, so was that when you decided on that standard or got some information back in the early stages of this, was that from headquarters, and headquarters said, yes, most of our chain of stores or whatever, this is probably the minimal that you're going to, you know, run into? And so the assumption was, yeah, they should have some audio, but you just happened to run into the one store that didn't have audio connected?
Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly it. And we found out pretty soon because we knew, you know, we did some troubleshooting, but we found out pretty soon once we got the hardware model of what they were using. We did some Googling and, you know, figured that out for them because it's not their responsibility. You know, they're managers at Darden Restaurant or a Longhorn. It's not a responsibility for them to troubleshoot the computer of why I can't hear this. So it was our responsibility, part of our sustainment and support agreement, to track that down and figure out what's going on and support and make sure that they're not having that issue. Now, there's nothing we can do about that, but luckily that's why we have closed captioning and it text-based too. So they just don't get to hear the sound effects or the audio narrator.
Nice. And so it still works.
Yeah.
Very, very, very cool. Well, yeah. So to Sam's point, right, I think when they create point of sale systems, the reason why they're so low end on the multimedia is that they're really not meant to do the multimedia stuff. But that was all discussed ahead of time, though, right? And you knew, and they had a reason for wanting to deliver it through those point of sale systems, right?
Yeah, because really in those restaurants, there's one computer in the back, and that's it. So if they want to train those individuals, they have multiple point of sales computers there that can open up a browser. Usually they come with a light browser. And so what they did is we just bookmarked Cornerstone, the URL to the Cornerstone, and then they could just log in and open up that course and take it right then and there. And so they could do it right from the point of sales when they needed to, on demand, or if they have some light time, or if they just want to practice it.
Awesome. Lots of different choices to choose from, lots of different things that we have to think about when we're making these decisions going through, and working with the customers is critical. So
that is
100 strong. All right, now we're going to get into musical gear. So everybody stay tuned for Guitars 101 after we sign off.
There are way too many guitars and stuff behind me. In fact, there's my... Oh, you can't see the Silverbush left.
Hey, Craig, you're taking us off the rails, man. You're distracting us. Stay on task. Hey, you know what? We are at the top of the hour, though, so we should probably say goodbye to everybody who's got meetings that they have to run to. But this has been a ton of fun. Thanks so much for doing this today, Andy, and sharing the process and all the cool stuff with us. And Craig, thanks for hanging out with us, man, and being part of the small town episode of TLD Cast.
I enjoyed it. Thanks.
Yeah. Before we cut out, Andy, how can people get a hold of you?
Oh yeah. You guys, depends on what. If you want to get a hold of me, you can find me on Twitter at Andy Hughes, or you can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find there's me on Twitter. You can find us at designingdigitally.com. And I just wanted to give you guys all a quick heads up. We did add a resource section, and now there's new infographics and white papers for download. This one just came out. Our research from doing microlearning in the workplace and what we have found from doing it for the past couple of years for customers. Infographics, case studies, blog. The blog's updated every single day for you guys to take a look at with great resources. I think today's actually points out a handful of different resources for instructional designers. And then you can also search. So if you're looking for something over gamification, you can find anything that we've written right here. And then each and every day, there's one in each one of the categories for you to take a look at and read about.
Awesome. Such good stuff. Thank you so much, guys. This has been a great show. I'm going to close out your videos, but we will see you next time for sure. Okay, guys?
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Thanks, everybody, again for hanging out with us today. What a great one. We geeked out a little bit on you there. For those of you who don't know what AIML is, I think we should definitely have Andrew back on, and we could do like a whole show on what it is, because when he and I talked about it a few months ago, that was the first time I'd heard of it. So an interesting new technology to geek out on. So always a great conversation. And to have two guys in the same industry hanging out in the same professional community from a town of like 200, it is just a super small world. But another fun reason why I love doing this. So good times, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. Sorry I went long. And we will see you all tomorrow. It's going to be another great TLD cast coming up. We'll talk to you all later. Have a great day.